So can you, Judy or Roberta, let me know if you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you.
We can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Well, stop talking. So, everyone, just so you know, we're gonna have a board meeting on Monday, like we always do. You're more than welcome to join. If you want some extra chances to get opportunity table plants today, you've got a table full of beautiful plants from Brookside Orchids. So you can get extra tickets by bringing food, bringing in a plant to show, and by wearing your name tag.
Starts the issue. Why are we not doing a raffle table?
Why are we not doing a raffle table is the question. The raffle table requires that we submit with the state a raffle license. And then at the end of the year, you have a tax review where you submit all your earnings and losses. And we spoke about it as a board, and decided at this point, if members are okay with just having an equal opportunity to win, we're gonna do that. If it becomes a problem and you really want to put your cash down, we can start doing out the tax forms and doing that. But as it is today, we actually don't make a lot of money on the opportunity table plant. And so we just considered it a loss that's worth it for the education of the community.
Because it's part of the fun is being able to buy your tickets.
Can I get a quick, just a feel from, I agree with you. Can I get a sense, just raise your hand. I miss the days when I could put money down and win raffle tickets.
I support the club that way. That's how I support it.
You can't just give him a donation.
Can I get the other side? Who enjoys having a free chance and nothing else? Free chance, no money. Just showing up, you get one ticket.
Why don't you vote again?
All right, I want to see the hands of people who miss the days when we could put money down and win plants. Opportunity table, raffle style. Okay, now how about the people who enjoy the way we've started doing it, where you come in, you get a ticket, everyone has equal opportunity to win. Mary, go ahead.
When you vote, if everyone who shows up a ticket.
That's what we used to do.
Okay, and then.
So here's what I propose. Let's try this a few more months. When and if there's a mutiny, we can switch back. I'm fine with that.
How complicated it is when you mentioned taxes and all that, that's
a Eugen and a Florence question.
We're in Sacramento, because they filed it.
I was gonna say, that made.
They got out that we were having a raffle, and the Attorney General's office came after us, because nothing better to do than walk down the street. We filed our paperwork every year, it's the top of our treasurer if you have questions.
Yeah, and that's what I said about Gold Coast. They do theirs every year, and our treasurer is also the treasurer of his church, so it's. I don't know if it's that big of a deal.
I think that people want to come every month and donate 20 or 50 bucks and not get raffle tickets, but because they want to support the club, that's great.
That's what I
Okay,
said.
No,
I love this. Hang on. I love this discussion. You know what an awesome place to have discussions like this would be? So I'll see you all there. Okay, so next steps. You can always bring your plants in, have them judged across the way here. You can also go over to Huntleya and get them judged. That's the third Saturday on the morning. And then you can also do the Sacramento meeting and get your plant judged on the first Wednesday of every month, so tomorrow.
And the third Sunday.
And the third Sunday. Is Rita Jose here? Maybe online? Well, welcome to the society if you're watching this video. All right, there's an announcement here. Peter, do you want to?
Yeah, we got this email that came in to us about rare orchid that was spotted near San Jose in this park. Unfortunately, this person who's been kind of taking care of them on his own for about 10 years now, noticed that they are spraying, they're mowing over it and everything, so they started a petition, which I put the QR code here. You can sign it online, it's free, you don't have to do anything, it's just to kind of force the local government down there to protect it and stop spraying herbicides down there, so. With a,
Contact the OS.
I think he did. He just reached out and said he was sharing it with multiple orchid societies and asked us to share it. So, it'll also be in the slides available online if you don't see it now, but yeah, it takes 2 seconds.
All right, this beautiful REI oxidized blood.
That referendum.
This is gonna be on the raffle table if I have to tell you about it. So come get your jackets this year. Second month I've had this.
Medium, it's by medium.
All right. Dave, you have an announcement.
Yes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Sorokowski from the Sacramento Orchid Society, Vice President, and with the California Sierra Nevada Judging Center. And we have our Speakers Day coming on August 9th in Sacramento, in Old Town Sacramento. We have a new venue. It's a nice Embassy Suites hotel with much better air conditioning than our old venue. We have Martin Moats speaking on miniature vandas. We have Tom Harper of Stone River Orchids speaking on novelty Phalaenopsis. And we have Doug Overstreet from the Thornton Conservatory of the Huntington Botanical Gardens. There is a live auction. If you've never seen Alan Koch in action auctioning, it's awesome. It's worth the trip just for that.
Yeah.
There's AOS judging, there's vendors, there's Gold Country Orchids, there's Pat Paradise, wherever that guy is. In situ orchids, Jeff Tyler, a lot of species, a lot of interesting rare stuff. We got him to join us. And then, of course, D&D flowers, Moats orchids with his vandas, and Stones River orchids with Phalaenopsis. And Martin has been working on cool tolerant vanda hybrids. So there will be things for you folks there. I have a stack of flyers. I will leave them over here next to the cherries I brought fresh from the Central Valley from my friend's orchard picked this morning. Hope to see you guys in Sacramento.
Paul, are you ready? You want to give me your announcement?
Oh, yeah, my former employer, Brookside Orchids over in Pacific, I need somebody to work part-time with flexible hours, 2 to 5. So if anybody's interested, contact me. I know I don't know how much.
All right, so if anyone would like, there's a part-time opening at Brookside. You'll be repotting orchids. See Paul for more information. I wanted to give you guys a heads up. We had our first kind of kickoff meeting for the Zootrophion phylogeny project. So about half a dozen of us got together, decided kind of the plan of action. So I started pulling DNA. This is my infographic. This is pulling DNA out of plant cells. We are going to basically start using primers to amplify bits of the plant genome, and then we will assemble those and check out what the actual Zootrophion phylogeny should be.
Which plants are you working on first?
Zootrophion, the genus. So I've got about 30 individuals that we're gonna get. Okay, so outside, there are some beautiful cards that say orchids in the park. When you leave today, grab a couple of those, share them with your friends. Sign up to volunteer, that'd be great. And if nothing, June 26th, 27th. July 26th, 27th. Okay, any other announcements? Am I forgetting anything?
Oh, this. Let it down so people can flip through it.
So, Jeff is gonna give his book to the opportunity to, no. Our speaker today, Marc H, is going to be on Softly's Huntleyas, but, and other related genera, but, he's got tons of experience. He's coming to us all the way from, the New York Botanic. Wrote this fantastic, beautiful book. You guys should thumb through it. I'll leave it up at the front table better. You can check that out and get a copy of that if you're interested. But we really appreciate you having on and playing early this morning and coming out. So thank you.
Glad you're doing that.
Look, I almost had a PhD in that.
Bill's not here then.
I know.
Okay.
That's, the keyboard.
No, no.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a long time since I've been in the Bay Area. It's nice to get reacquainted with some old friends and new ones. I am Marc H, Director of Glasshouse Horticulture and Senior Curator of Orchids at the New York Botanical Garden. But those of you who've known me for a long time know that I am not only a species aficionado, but an all-around plant nerd. The group of plants I'm here to talk about tonight, well, first is a preface. I prefer to talk to a group. I don't want to talk at you. I like to talk with you. So if there are any questions, if you need me to repeat something, I'm from New York. We move pretty quickly. And if you need a repeat of something, I will be happy to do so. Just get my attention. Hey, you works. If that goes, we can move to 4-letter words, but hey, you usually works. For this talk, there are a lot of Latin names in here that are very long, like my last name, in which don't worry about trying to remember the complexities. I will be sharing essentially the plant list from this lecture, along with a lot of the basic information with the newsletter editor, in which can be emailed out to all the members. This way you don't have to be scribbling down names and wondering what the heck I am saying in this process. But the group of orchids that I want to talk about tonight is a group of plants that is quite often not only overlooked, but I think very undercultivated in terms of orchid diversity. This group of orchids is closely related to Zygopetalum, the classic blue velvet plants, but one of the major differences within this group of plants is that they do not have pseudobulbs, and they're linked together because they're considered to be a soft-leaved group of orchids. This group, the Zygopetalinae, is not only, to me, one of the more interesting group of orchids in terms of size, diversity, shape, in which they're also, to me, very easy to grow. They make rapid specimens, and I think they deserve a larger place in your collection, whether you grow species or hybrids, miniatures or full-size plants. There's something for everybody. And it's not advancing. Ever frozen. Oh, wait. There we go. So before we get into most talks today these days, there is a bit of a taxonomic disclaimer. These are plants that exist not only in catalogs and collections under many different names. As DNA phylogeny has allowed us to understand the origins of many plants, the names have changed. And as a result, some of the plants you may see here, you may be familiar with other names, but when it comes to these changing names, it becomes very difficult because they never change them to easy to spell or remember names. But within this group of plants, regardless of whatever name is on your label, they are all wonderful and fantastic plants. This group of orchids is a group of plants that has fascinated me since my early days of orchid growing 40 years ago, in which I grew them very easily on a windowsill. I've grown them under lights. I've grown them in greenhouses. And for the types of plants that exist here, they have an endless fascination for me in terms of their diversity, flower shape, color, and even plant habit. When we look at this group of plants, this Pescatoria Huntleya alliance, as I mentioned, they're generally soft-leaf plants with no pseudobulbs. The inflorescences are single-flowered, borne around the base of the plant. Many of them are also fragrant. And their plants can also be miniatures, from plants only a few inches tall to some of the larger species, which can make fans almost nearly 3 feet. Most of them are epiphytic, in which they would grow very well in moss or bark mixes, like our other epiphytic orchids that we have in our collections. A few species will also be grown terrestrially in leaf litter. And what I find in that when they're happy, they rapidly grow into specimen plants, producing multiple leaves from each fan, in which you can have a massive specimen, even in a tiny 4-inch pot, which on some of the miniatures will even ring themselves with blooms when they're happy. In terms of their culture, most of them are intermediate to warm growers. There are a few that will range down to the cooler temperature range, but they'll survive in a wide range of conditions. Since the plants lack pseudobulbs, they prefer constant
even moisture. They don't have the water storage devices that other members like Zygopetalum have. And so they're prone to some damage and difficulties like accordion pleating of leaves and some other issues if they don't have that constant even moisture. They're not as humidity dependent as many Pleurothalidae are, but they still prefer a relative high humidity. They grow easily in a path mix or sphagnum moss. And one of the things that because the leaves are very soft, they can be somewhat prone to bacterial diseases like Erwinia or some of this leaf spotting, especially if the plants are subjected to very poor stagnant air circulation. Quite often when they're subjected to that sort of less than ideal environment, you can get leaf drop. But even after some of that leaf drop, the plants do recover very quickly. And when it comes to pests and diseases, I've grown them for many years and I find them to be relatively pest-free. Occasionally you will get some issues with mites, some aphids on flower buds, and of course mealybugs, which seem to like just about everything. But when it comes to this plant, I find that in terms of their culture, they're quite simple to grow. I usually grow them in terracotta pots with sphagnum moss. And what a friend of mine who's no longer with us coined the term cupcake style, in which you grow them kind of in this mounded, kind of looks like a muffin. That way, not only the plant will be able to sort of keep its air circulation, but by potting it high, when the flowers do emerge, they can get over the edge of the pot and they're displayed very nicely. Some of the smaller species, some of the ones we'll see here, will actually do very well mounted with a little bit of a pad of sphagnum moss, or if they can be kept watered frequently, they will do very well in those conditions as well. As I mentioned, you can even see on the left side of the specimen here, excessive drying of the media and irregular watering will lead to accordion pleating and sometimes tip dieback, which really is mostly cosmetic and it won't help really hurt the plant in the long term. And this, once the conditions are adjusted, they will return and resume growth as normal.
Question.
Yes.
So what type of water is required to do?
I have some pretty nasty water and they still survive. I do get some tip dieback, but in general, the better the water you have, the better the quality of the plants will be. But I find that they're somewhat more tolerant than other plants about water quality. The roots on these plants are very thick comparatively, and so they don't have much of a root dieback issue as you do with many fine rooted species like Pleurothalids or Miltoniopsis, in which you have poor water quality, or even if a mixed sours. That coarse root system does give them a little bit of benefit and protection in terms of water quality issues. I find that the plants are not only vigorous root producers, but they are also vigorous foliage producers, and that they can produce very large specimens in a short period of time. Because the way the plants bloom in and amongst the foliage, sometimes it is good to divide them regularly. That way the flowers don't get hidden and crowded in amongst those growths. And because these plants produce very vigorous root systems, they do appreciate relatively frequent repotting. Like many orchids, they do not like when a mix starts to sour and break down, and that can cause some root dieback. But in the case of most of these plants, I find that when I take them out of the pot, you can barely see the potting medium. There's such an abundance of roots around the plants. And as I said, dividing the plants frequently gives you not only the best display of flowers, but I find it also sometimes for some of the larger clumping plants where the older growths might die out towards the center, it helps rejuvenate that plant and give a better appearance and more vigorous growth when divided and repotted. In looking how these plants grow in nature, many of these plants in this alliance grow in very low light environments. They're growing towards the bases of trees, halfway up, cloud forest conditions, as you can see here at the Pescatoria, growing amongst bromeliads and upper epiphytes in the moss layer. And on the right, shot of a bolea growing in a tree in Colombia to give an idea. And for the Bay Area growers, you have almost a perfect environment for many of these genera, including some of the species we have challenges with on the East Coast with our warm and humid summers. These plants growing in lower light conditions will often make clumps at the base of the trees and then grow very well there. And so to give an idea, many people would equate either Pleurothalid type conditions for them, but many of them will still grow fine just alongside paths without that kind of fog belt or cloud forest conditions. But to go through a list of diversity in terms of species, as I mentioned, there's monsters to miniatures when it comes to this group of plants. Thankfully, a lot of the South American vendors have propagated a lot of these rarities. Plants you might have only seen once in a lifetime now are becoming more readily available. And there is growing interest not only in hybridizing this group of orchids, but also cultivating a diversity of species. And I think now more than ever in my orchid career, the diversity of plants within this group that's available to the average grower is better than I think it's ever been. There are some real oddities, a very unusual genus called Benzingia, which has these, the challenge with Benzingias is they only have leaves that may be about 10 to 12 inches long, but they almost grow perpendicular to whatever they're growing on. The flower is about an inch and a half wide, hangs down under the foliage, and these were extreme rarities for many, many years. But some of the South American vendors are now propagating these. And it's one of those plants that I kind of find it fun, a little bit of exploration. You have to make a little effort to get under and to appreciate the flowers, but really an odd genus that shows some of the diversity that exists within this group of plants. One of my favorite genera, I heard a few names, and I know this is a plant you see more often out here than we do on the East Coast, the genus Chabardia, a Chabardia heteroclita, in which there are a number of different forms, which you have a yellow form, there are some that even have blue lips, and this is kind of, to me, kind of the perfectly proportioned plant in this group. You have a miniature to moderate sized plant with flowers that are displayed upright around the edge of the clump of the plant. And it is a plant that I really wish was more and more available. And I hope people like Marnie propagate it from seed soon, just to keep this species around. Some of the most stunning types of this plant are the blue-lipped forms. And their photographs are very difficult to capture because to my eye, the color almost hovers above the flower rather than on the flower. This group of orchids, like Zygopetalums, also is one of the few groups of plants that has blue or near blue flowers. So for all of you who crave having that true blue orchid, this is one of the ones you can attain rather than Thelemitres that'll break your heart, or Acacalis cyanea, which will give you just a headache trying to keep it alive. When it comes to the plants, these are really fantastic, very floriferous, and like many plants in this group, there are a few that will produce flowers sporadically, one over a long period of time. But many of these are almost gregarious in their flowering, in which they produce a large flush of buds, in which you get a beautiful display opening around the base of the plant. And in addition, many of them are also fragrant. One of my favorite genera, because the flowers to me just look otherworldly, Chabardiella, in which another one group of plants that has been an extreme rarity for years, but thankfully to the efforts of people like Marnie, who are propagating some of these from seed, they really have these incredibly patterned spotted flowers on miniature to moderate sized plants. To me, they remind me of like Stapelias and many of those other terrible smelling succulents, but without that terrible smell. And really a delightful and wonderful group of plants, well worth seeking out from any of the sources that carry these plants. A number of years ago, the taxonomic flux within this group of plants changed the genera names based on how they interact with their pollinator. They found that the phylogeny, the family tree of these plants, was very much related to how pollinators interact with them, in particular where the pollen is placed on the back of the bee that pollinates them. So a number of these names have changed. But the genus Condorhyncha is a miniature to moderate sized plants, often with these very fantastical and whimsical looking flowers. You know, you can use your imagination to try to see whether you're seeing a puppy dog, a flying dragon, whatever it is. And what I love about the Condorhynchas is when they bloom, they ring the edge of the pot. So you get this wonderful kind of 360 display when they're in flower. The added bonus is that many of these plants actually have very thick and waxy blooms. So the flowers are actually very long lived. They're not like a couple of days and then the next thing you know, you're back to leaves, but these will last several weeks under ideal conditions, and some of them can last a month or more. Condorhyncha is very popular in cultivation, but very few species in terms of the diversity. Condorhyncha lindleyana is around for a while with these wonderful butter yellow flowers, kind of a peppery fragrance to my nose, but a really delightful plant. And it's one of those kind of bright white yellows that you can spot from the other side of the greenhouse when it's in bloom. Really wonderful foliage, got a bit glaucous, meaning a blue-green coloring to it. And I find it even attractive out of flower. One of the great newer discoveries is Chondrica andreae, which is native to Colombia, named after Andrea Neeson. And this is just one of those plants that looks like it's just suffering and screaming at you. But I just love those flowers, and they're very large comparative to the side of the plant. This is still a rarity in cultivation, and I hope it's propagated more, but in the future, I hope it's to see it around more and more, because it really is one of the more outrageous species in this genus with this wild. This one I haven't cultivated, but I've been told it's not as floriferous as some of the other species in the genus. But this one supposedly, it's still very rare and limited in cultivation. It's not as floriferous, but the flowers are bigger, so you get fewer flowers, but larger flowers.
I was going to do that, breed with Chivavi.
Yes, this whole mess of this genus will breed between the genera. We'll talk about that a little bit toward the end. I have the fortunate, I guess the great fortune that my partner is Colombian. So I get to go to Colombia a lot. And what he does while he visits his family is he drops me off and I get to go run around Orchid. What a perfect deal, right? So he gets to get rid of me and I stand in the corner like a little kid waiting for the school bus and get whisked away to see all the orchid diversity in the nurseries there. And I've had the great fortune of visiting collections many times during the year. And one of the groups of plants, obviously, that I love this alliance in the genus Chondrica is this particular group in which there's a suite of species, about 4 or 5, Escobariana amabilis, that are very difficult to distinguish. What they are is kind of the Rhyncholalia digbianas of this group, in which you have large 3 to 4 inch flowers with these wonderful fimbriate lips and sometimes fimbriations on the petals. Beautiful, I think, very graceful and beautiful fans of foliage. And these very large butter yellow flowers that hang out around the base of the plant. It's one of those plants that no matter how many times I see it, I still, kind of stop and swoon. This is a group of this genus that has a little bit more to the intermediate cool conditions. They would do very well in the Bay Area, but they are well worth seeking out, not only for the size and beauty of the blooms, but because they're just really just amongst some of the most exquisite in this group of orchids. If you like fragrance, the genus Cochleanthes has a very large flower species, 3 to 4 inches, in which you have this kind of lime green with this blue violet lip. And this is a plant that quite often I smell it before I see it when the flower opens, because in amongst all the foliage and the plants on the bench, the flowers are blooming at the base. And as you're going through and watering, suddenly there's this very strong kind of citrusy aroma. And then I go, oh, it's in bloom. You dig through the leaves and there it is in flower. These flowers are like plastic. They're so waxy and hard. It's incredible, not only the texture on them, but to me, all of those keels and that blue violet color give it kind of this haunting glow in amongst the base of the foliage. Probably the plant that most everyone has seen in this group, and this I'll tell a great story about our departed friend James Rose. Cochleanthes discolor is a very popular orchid and has been grown for a long time. It's one of the great and easiest of the fabled blue orchids to grow. James, when giving a lecture, and I'm sure he'd be happy if I stole his story here, thought this was not only such a great plant, he figured everyone could grow it and everyone should grow it. And he made an announcement where he said, anyone who's not growing this plant, give me a call, I'll get you one. Well, it turns out he had to ship out a hell of a lot of them to fulfill his promise, because not as many people as he thought were growing it. This is an orchid that comes in a multitude of color forms. Most of them are rarely seen. The typical form on the left side of the image there, Cochleanthes discolor, in which you have a relatively white flower, some color on the petals, with that beautifully intense blue violet lip with that yellow keel. The fragrance is odd. It smells like white pepper. And there are a number of color forms, including Alba rosea and these kind of dark tipped forms that are around in cultivation. There's a very famous clone I know, it's probably around in several collections here, from Lil Severin, a famous California orchid grower. That's an excellent grower. And this is a plant that whether you grow on a windowsill, under lights, in a greenhouse, growing simple orchids or complex ones, it is a plant that will not only thrive and survive, but blooms for me at the botanical garden in less than ideal conditions, mind you, sometimes twice a year. If you were to start with any species in this alliance, and you can't get much better than this, because not only is it compact and floriferous, it's also got that incredible blue-violet color and very, very easy to grow. Thankfully, there's been some breeding coming out of Hawaii recently in which they've done some new seed selections. This plant, which was sort of disappearing, has become readily available again. And if you like miniature and compact species, this is a plant that I would absolutely recommend everyone at least have one in their collection. The real darlings of this group is the genus Pescatoria. Pescatorias will have intermediate to large leaf plants that can get up to almost 24 inches in some of the larger species. But the flowers are very, very large, in which you have sometimes almost up to 3 to 4 inches in diameter if you grow them well. And they're highly patterned. This genus was merged with the genus Bolea, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But they are amongst some of the best growing and largest flowered types. And this is one of the groups, the genera, which for a long time people have now been doing line breeding, in which they're selecting exceptional clones and breeding bigger and better blooms. There's a famous clone of this called Tokyo that was bred for a number of years to get exceptional forms, and there still are plants of it out there. But Pescatoria lemani, and one of the things that I love about orchids is obviously the diversity. And when you look at Pescatoria lemani, you can get everything from white flowers with this kind of heavy raspberry overlay to ones that are peppermint striped, even blue-violet tones, in which you have a white flower with blue stripes on it. There's a huge diversity, and since I have this crazy collector mentality, I want one of every color there is. In which there are albas and this, so it becomes endless, where every time you see one in bloom, it's like, oh, I don't have that one, I'm gonna buy that one.
Mark, so what's your take on the line breeding of species? I mean, what you got, so you have a.
My take on it, meaning like
I think
good, bad, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
I like it and I don't. As a species purist, I still love wild type forms,
Yeah.
but also as an orchid aficionado, when that flower has reached that kind of zenith of perfection,
Right.
it's still pretty darn
Well,
nice.
so the line breeding, the thing with that is that people take, okay, so it's got a name of blue mania, right? So they pull from different ranges, different extents of the range of species. Basically, you're almost making a hybrid because they genetically change over time and distance, right?
That, we can have a whole debate on that.
I know.
And I could just use one example of Sophronitis coccinea.
Yeah.
Because what happens is the reason why all those tetraploid coccineas are orange is because they have too much tissue and you lose the red and you get orange. So we could go on for hours, but look, when you see an FCC Paff Rothschildianum, is anyone going to say no to adding that to their collection? But when it comes to the line breeding of these things, to me, there's a difference between botanical selection and botanical conservation and horticulture selection. So you're dealing with sort of a fork in the road there. I will go down both ways. I'm a Gemini. What can I say?
It's not fair. That's what I.
Oh, yeah, look at DC uniflora. If you bring in some wiggly looking DC uniflora, what are people gonna be like? But if you bring in a beautifully shaped one, everyone's gonna swoon over it. Same thing goes for people. In line breed, so, but when it comes down to it, we can debate that for hours. From botanical conservation standpoint, it is not good because you actually modify the flowers to where many cases the pollinator can no longer pollinate the plant in the wild. But when it comes to horticultural selection, all bets are off. How many people own mutts? How many people own purebred dogs? Same kind of thing. So, do you love your dog any less, whether it's a mutt or a purebred? No. So that's the way I see it when it comes to orchids. That's a whole other story. You know, I knew he was gonna be trouble. We share the same birthday, so he's already causing trouble. Anyway, within the genus Pescatoria, you also have these wonderful patterns, these kind of painted fingernail tips, Pescatoria clavicorum. Something that you used to see years ago and is becoming rare again. The species that I absolutely love and kind of one of the oddities in this genus, Pescatoria serena, with these incredible butter yellow flowers with that really dark cone-like callus. Species native to Central America. And it is one of those things, when you see a beautiful specimen of this in bloom, it is just takes your breath away. It's actually one of the more intermediate to warm growing species in this group. I have found in New York City, where we get hot and humid in summer, many of these plants will survive, they will bloom, but you don't necessarily get the intensity of color in the flowers that you would when they were grown in cooler conditions. I have plants that when you grow them cool and they flower in the winter, you get these incredible deep reds and raspberries. And if they throw out an odd flower in summer, they're these wishy-washy pink. So don't throw out your plant just because the time of year it blooms. Sometimes it can be just a matter of the temperature during floral development. But the group that used to be in the genus Bolea, which is now in the, thanks to taxonomists, in the genus Pescatoria, has a really wonderful suite of species in which many of these are the true blues and violets. These are the heartbreakers. You have Pescatoria, remember this, Pescatoria ecuadoriana, relatively small blooms, about 1.5 to 2 inches across, in which you will have everything from pink to blues to violets to even near albas and cerulea, occasionally odd ones with these strange patterns on them. It is a species that tolerates warmth, it tolerates dryness, and one is the more vigorous and also floriferous ones for me in warmer conditions. A species that I wish was still around, and if anybody knows how to help me find a Pescatoria or Bolea violacea, I'd be very happy. It was a species that was not only infrequent in cultivation years ago, but when it's grown well, has the most deep purple violet of this group. It's relatively small, it'll get you in a second, Ron, and the flowers are large in comparison to the size of the plant. And it is when it's the best clones are true sort of grape violet purple. Is it around here?
Might ask him if he got it. You can see Jeff tomorrow. Might ask him if he got the one of the power guns left.
Okay, because it's one of those
Great
that's,
shape, but it was the species.
there was a period when I only knew 4 plants of this. I had done seed propagation and somebody sold my flask on me. That's another tale of woe. Anyway, the genus Bolea, they're often known for these very grotesque, very waxy, somewhat animalistic looking blooms.
Safer.
Taper, that's a good description, if anyone knows what a taper is. But the flowers themselves bloom around the base of the plant, 12 to 18 inch tall plants, if not larger. And what I love about them is the blooms themselves, you feel them, not only are they waxy, they are downright heavy in terms of the weight and thickness of the blooms. Yeah, this kind of large beaten nose taper look. Other oddities, you know, these are the things where you sometimes you ever get the impression you're being watched in the greenhouse. Pescatoria, Limdii, finding this growing in a friend's greenhouse in Colombia, you know, you looking at it, you know, it's looking at you. And those flowers, it's impossible to describe the substance on these. You could squeeze them and they don't budge. They make Stanhope flowers seem like weak in their texture. Ooh, whoa, goodness, where did we go? Go back. How far did we go? What's going on here? We're going the wrong way.
Good talk, Mark.
Yay! Oh my God. Power corrupts and PowerPoint corrupts absolutely. There we go. Why? And we're back.
Why is it called Pescatoria?
Pardon?
Why do you call it Pescatoria?
It was named after a person.
It sounds like a fish.
Pescator, yeah. So it was named after Mr. Pescator. And of course, if that isn't enough, the spelling has changed several times throughout history. It used to be Pescatorea, IA. It's been a labeling nightmare when it comes to this genus.
I didn't want to point out you spelled it wrong on the heading.
I did. I thought I corrected all those. Who invited you?
That was a prize for today.
Ron.
Mark, who is it named after?
Italian person by the name of Mr. Pescatore. If I remember correctly.
That's the quality.
Pescatore. So, it means a fisherman, so then we get back to fish. It doesn't smell like fish. This is not bulba. The absolute queen, king, whatever you want to say in this genus is Pescatoria celestis, one of the true blue orchids out there. Depending on the temperature you grow it, depends on the level of blue you get. I've had exceptional clones that will bloom the palest, muddiest of colors. There is some line breeding that's been done of this. There's been a number of clones that have been selfed and bred. The best ones originate from Colombia, in which some of them have made their way to the Bay Area, in which there's a number of clones around, hopefully still around, like San Carlos and the one that came from Colombo Orchids a number of years ago, in which it's difficult to photograph them because they have such intense blue violet color that it kind of warps the image a little bit. But one of the other great things about this species is that when it is happy, I talk about gregarious flowering, they do things like this. A couple of years ago at the Cali Orchid Show, there was a specimen that even made this pale in comparison, that from the photograph was just unbelievable. The plants themselves are relatively compact. They don't get too large. But in terms of their flowers, they're well proportioned. They last a long time. And because you guys can grow well cool here, you will get this wonderful intensity out of these blue violet colors. So another plant that I'm working on trying to get some selfings of. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
so you mentioned that the temperature can kind of dictate how blue the orchid is.
Correct.
So what is the?
What is the reason why? Well, so blue and many red pigments are influenced by temperature. That particular group of the pigments are called anthocyanins. Many plants, if you know plants that are grown in high light, they turn that reddish color. The same thing happens with flowers. Cool temperatures and bright light conditions will influence the productions of anthocyanins, meaning it'll intensify them, in which your reds will become more red, your blues will become more blue. So the cooler the temperature and the brighter, the better and the intensity of the color. If that flower also develops at cooler temperatures, it will develop and open over a longer period. The longer that bud takes to develop, the more pigment can also be produced. So what you're doing is you're slowing down the process, almost like ripening, in which the longer you can get that bud to develop in those cool conditions, the more intense those blue violet colors are. Does that answer the question? You're very welcome. For those of you who've run out of space in your greenhouses and are wedging plants in between others, I know who you are. I see a lot of people nodding. It's me as well. And for those of you who love miniature orchids, two of the miniature orchid, stars here. The genus Kiefersteinia, for those, even if you love things that are just adorable, has a huge number of species that I am forever buying every one I see. If it's a name I haven't seen, I buy it. Because I know if it's a Kiefersteinia, it's just going to grow and bloom well. There's a whole group of white flowered species in which you have these wonderful crystalline, sparkling textured blooms on plants that are only 3 to 4 inches tall, and they'll produce 5, 6, 10, 12 flowers per growth. What I love about them is they're extremely floriferous. They don't take up a lot of space. And when they're happy, they grow like crazy. And for those of you who like the weird, I got to throw the weirdos in here. Not everything has to be pretty, right? You have things like Kiefersteinia trillata, which I don't know. We could do a contest of what you guys see in this. I don't know, maybe take a monkey, a pirate. Did I hear a pirate? Something scary. A lady with a big bird. A clown. I'm testing who took an edible before the meeting. Either way, you look at this and you can't stop looking at it. It's just fascinating. It's just one of those plants that every time you water and it's in bloom, you have to stop and pick up and look at it. It really is just fantastic and an easy plant to grow. Not as floriferous for me as some of the other species, but still just as rewarding. Perhaps my favorite in the genus Kiefersteinia is the plant Kiefersteinia pulchella. I didn't put a picture of a massive specimen that I think Cindy grew, in which in a very small pot, it just absolutely rings the base of the plant with these blooms that are this great green with that beautiful oxblood spot on the end of the lip. It's a plant that grows and blooms well for me. And every couple of years, I take that 4-inch pot and I can probably make 4 4-inch pots. It just grows and grows and grows. And it's out of all of these, it doesn't get leaf spotting for me. It's just super vigorous. And another one of those plants, if you see it, grab it because you won't be disappointed when it starts to flower for you. As I said, many of these plants, especially Kiefersteinias, are somewhat gregarious and will bloom all around the base of the plant. In this section of the genus, there are a lot of them that have these olive colored flowers covered with maroon spotting, in which you have Kiefersteinia graminia and a number of other species native throughout the Andes, in which, once again, if I see it and I don't have that name, I got to get it because I know it's going to be good. And for another weirdo, Kiefersteinia parvulabris, which you kind of, you kind of looking at it, it's looking back at you. Species that has much broader leaves than many others in the genus, but a plant that will bloom sporadically over a long period of time. When this flowers near me, I've got 3 or 4 flowers, a couple of weeks later, more and more and more, and it blooms for several months for me in spring into early summer. Really adorable thing. Another one of these wonderful fimbriated things I saw that, ooh, there, that was, there was the plant lust coming out. Keeper Mysticina, not as floriferous for me as some of the other ones are, but what it doesn't make up in terms of flower power, it makes up in these exquisite fringed flowers. Have you flowered yours yet?
Yes, I got it from orchids, the Colombian last summer, and about 4 to 6 weeks later it flowered, and it's really grown, it's doubled in size since then.
Super vigorous, and they're just, when it blooms, it's adorable, really adorable. So
Yeah.
testimonial there. For those of you who don't like miniatures and want a little bit more pizzazz, you want something a little more Cattleya sized. This was a species that had virtually disappeared from cultivation until probably about the late 1980s, 1990s, in which a group of people basically went back to the Amazon to find it and reintroduce it into cultivation. Horsvixiella amazonica, formerly known as Cochleanthes amazonica, another one of these spectacular kind of queens of the genus, in which you have a compact plant, which will maybe get 12 to 8 inches tall at maturity, but the blooms can be almost 6 inches from top to bottom. They feel like they're carved out of wax. And for those of you who don't necessarily grow cool and maybe grow a little warmer, this is a plant for you. A lot of times we all know some of the most spectacular plants are always the cold growers or cool growers like that, Pescatoria celestis. Well, Horsvixiella amazonica does well in everywhere from Arizona to New York in intermediate to warm conditions. If you can grow past, you can grow this plant, and it'll make a beautiful specimen even into a 4-inch pot, in which you get a number of blooms there. And those stripes in the lip are actually kind of velvet violet, in which they sparkle, and there's incredible texture. Really amazing. Also makes great hybrids, which we'll see in a little bit. For those in the genus, there's also Horsvixiella marginata, called that way because of the margin of the lip, in which there's a lot of diversity in these, and you get a number of clones and you get a number of different flower patterns on them. Flowers are relatively tiny compared to the size of the plant. I still think it's adorable, but also importantly used in hybridizing, as we'll see a little bit later. One of my favorites, although many people kind of sit there and laugh at me because it has some of the smallest of flowers, the plant's about 10 inches tall, is Horsvixiella candida. Species native to Brazil, but even with one flower, you can smell it on the bench. It smells intensely of hyacinth, like a zygopetalum. And you immediately know it's there. It's a plant that when it blooms in the greenhouse, I bring it into the house. And then the next day, my partner moves it back to the greenhouse, because even with that one flower on the kitchen table, it's a little much if you're not into fragrance. But it smells like hyacinth. It smells just like your typical zygopetalum, where that very, very powerful, whether you like it or not, fragrance that they possess. But that one little flower can really perfume the whole room. What I love also about the color is I describe this color, the idea of the color floating above. It's almost more of a reflection than it is a pigment on the flower. It has this very ethereal quality to it. And it's a plant that tolerates warm, cold, and even survived a freeze in my greenhouse. So if you want to talk about durability, this Brazilian species has it in terms of this group of plants. Some of the most spectacular and somewhat challenging to grow is the genus Huntleya. Huntleyas can be very large fan-shaped plants, sometimes almost 24 inches in diameter. Many of these are intermediate to warm growing. They can be a little bit fussy. One of the other challenges in this group of plants, most of these are clumping plants. Many Huntleyas have a bad habit of making their next fan above the previous one. So they have a tendency to climb. If you can grow mounted or on a moss pole, it will do well. If not, in humid conditions, they will survive. Huntleyas generally are not as floriferous as some of the other members of this group, but what they don't make up for quantity, they make up for size, in which the flowers can be almost on exceptional clones of some species, almost 5 inches in diameter. To see these in bloom is something that is absolutely haunting. That waxy texture, that seersucker pattern, and with the colors and patterns they have are truly spectacular. Unfortunately, they're still uncommon in cultivation, whether you're looking at Huntleya meleagris, which has been cultivated for several hundred years, it seems, but some of the other smaller growing species, which were true rarities, are now making their way into cultivation, thankfully to some of the South American growers and Colombian growers who are propagating them, in which we now have the ability to grow smaller species like Huntleya gustavi. And this was a plant that you see a photo and you're like, can it really look that good? I finally was able to get one and I bloomed them and I can tell you, yes, it really looks that good. This is not trickery of photography. Pardon? Minimum temperature requirement. I keep this one on the warm side. I find that I get a lot of leaf spotting if I grow it towards the cooler side. So my minimum temperature on this one is like 60-ish. So. Because what happens is if they start getting black spot and then it becomes a battle. So I grow my Huntleyas a little bit on the warmer side and they seem to prefer that as well. So we all know about hybridizing. Ron, I can see him rolling his eyes here. You know,
I'm there.
yeah, I can feel it. I can feel it. When it comes to hybridizing, we all know that not only are you improving shape, form, color, you're increasing the range that exists. But one of the other things that happen, everyone has heard the term hybrid vigor, and that many times hybrids are more vigorous than their species parent. That may make them more floriferous. It may make them more grow faster. It also many times makes them more tolerant of a wide range of conditions, and they're not as fussy. If you get a little bit out of the wrong range, they don't drop dead on you. Cochleanthes or Vorsivixiella amazonica crossed onto a different species gives you Vorsivixiella amazing, which you get all of the look as the parent plants, but then you even get some that have these completely purple lips.
Mark, you skirted that really well by right here.
I blanked it. I'm telling you, who invited them? There also is some breeding being done in pescatorias in which they're combining these wonderful pattern species to see what comes out, in which you get these wonderful raspberry pattern plants. Probably the finest of this group is a hybrid Pescatoria Alice Hipkins, which is Lemani onto, not Coronaria, the other one I can't remember, in which you have these incredible violet flowers. That's the actual color of the bloom. That's a plant from my greenhouse at home. And, you know, I saw there's a number of plants of this Grex that have been awarded around the world, in which you look at the photographs and your first thought is that can't be real. But then when you actually see them in bloom, yes, it is. And it is, to me, the best of this hybrid group. It is not only vigorous, it's floriferous, but you really can't, I can't think of many other orchids, if any orchids, other than the ones that die in the grocery stores, that approach this level of color saturation in the blooms of the plants. There's a resurgence in interest in breeding with this group of plants. Many of you know Tim Culbertson at Oceanside Orchids. He and I have been chatting back and forth about this for a while, and he's now delved into breeding within this alliance, in which he's looking for blues and violets, looking for warmth tolerance, floriferousness, in which he's doing SIB crosses with those the previous hybrid to get more diversity and make them more available. And he's really had some great winners. This was Victoria Star Sapphire, which originates from Clem orchids years ago, but he's breeding further on with it, in which you have a flower with a span almost the size of the plant. And it's something like the Coxiella Siku Chukango, in which you have this wonderful velvet purple lip. The potential in this group is really untapped, but it does just take an intrepid hybridizer, some toothpicks, some pollen, and some time, in which this group of plants that was once a rarity and something uncommon in cultivation, you look at this, you have a plant in a 3-inch pot blooming with that many flowers on that small of a plant. And I think we've only just seen the beginning, and I promised him in exchange for me using those photos that I wouldn't steal his thunder. And if you were to have him up here talking about this group of plants, but if you want to learn more about some of his hybridizing, there was a recent article not too long ago, I think in 2024, that he wrote for Orchids magazine, and I would definitely seek that out, because as far as I am concerned, it doesn't get much better than this group of orchids. And another little plug, there's very little information about this group of plants. You might find a little reference here and there. There was a book written a couple of years ago on them if you want some more information, but of course, the compendium on miniature orchid species does have a number of these in there. And with a little bit of digging and a little bit of knowledge, I think these are all orchids that you should add to your collection, because they fascinated for me for years. And as I said, I don't think you can go wrong with a single one of them. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Except Ron.
I made Johnny stand, yeah.
This can't be a 2-hour talk. That's only a small sampling of the genera that exists here. There are many, many other genera. There's probably about 9 other genera that I didn't include in here because one, they're virtually impossible to find. Or you might be only find 1 or 2 here and there. So I tried to start off, but this is a group of plants, like, once you start, you can't stop. Next thing you know, you have one of everything. Question?
Yeah, just wondering if you could comment on, you mentioned the Huntleyas are kind of pain to grow. What about them?
I have always
More or
found
less-
them very challenging. They're very fussy. I've been told that I don't grow them warm enough. But then I also see them in Colombia growing in cool conditions right alongside Masdevallia coccinea. So I can't seem to figure out what the success is. There's a few species I've succeeded with. For a number of years, I did fantastically with Huntleya meleagris and Huntleya birdi. And then I moved to a different greenhouse and then they hate me again. So to me, unfortunately, I wish I could answer that. The species that do well for me are Gustavi. I have a meleagris that's hanging on, and Citrina. The meleagris and Berti are the ones that have sort of eluded me
Yeah,
again.
that's spectacular.
They're the most spectacular in the group. Many of the Colombian orchid growers that you ask them and they go, I don't know, it just grows. You know, that typical answer you get. So as far as from what I've been told, it's challenging. It's one, reestablishing the plants after importing. They're notoriously finicky about being divided in root disturbance from my experience, especially Huntleya's, more than any other in this group. And once they get reestablished, I've been told that I grew them better. I grew them more better. Oh my God. I grew them better in the warm greenhouse in a shaded, humid corner next in the failed house than I did in the intermediate house. I think what it may also have to do with is the stability of the environment. There are a lot of plants that do not tolerate instability in their environment. They like a constant when it comes to humidity, moisture, and wide ranges and fluctuations in that. They suck. And I get the impression that Huntleya's may be that case as well.
Yeah, thank you.
If you figure it out, let me know. How is climate change going to affect the flowers? The warmer it gets, we may not get as blue as we will, but where climate change is affecting these plants is that many of the cloud forests that they are found in are essentially disappearing. They're drying out. The cloud layer is now advancing higher and higher in altitude, faster than plants can migrate. There are areas that I've been to that 10, 15 years ago had abundant moss layers and were full of all sorts of epiphytes. And now that area is now dry and you have to even go up higher in altitude. Eventually, the mountain ends, the plants can't climb higher. And so a lot of these plants are being impacted through habitat change, and especially drying out and the reduction or elimination of the cloud layer that provides the moisture for many of these epiphytes.
The other thing that's happening is because it's drying out, those places are burning, never burning.
Yes. There are areas where fire was never a problem that now we have seen areas in Colombia where pine production is the other thing that's affecting these plants. Pine production in many areas of Colombia is what the deforestation is driven by, not necessarily as much as agriculture. They're growing particular types of pines for paper and wood pulp. And what they're doing is they're cutting down swaths of forest because the pines can grow at the higher altitudes. And unfortunately, one of the things that comes along with the pines is fire. So the agricultural system is introducing not only non-native species that will burn, but also now into areas that are becoming less fire resistant because of lack of moisture. Yeah, it's terrible to go through areas that once were abundant with orchids and orchid species and then just see monocultures of pine. Unfortunately.
I have a question about lighting. How far can I push the lighting on Victoria? Is it somewhere where I'm gonna be in the mid zone, or do I have to leave it like a pleurothallid?
I would keep it in that kind of pleurothallid pass zone. You'll know they'll yellow before they burn. So if they start getting too yellow, reduce your light.
All right.
Are there any other questions? Thank you for having us.
Okay, Kay, are you ready? Are you show and tell? Your check's in the mail. Your check's in the mail.
to raise money for passport conservation.
Well,
I guess you think.
yeah.
I haven't flowered. Oh, yeah, I had a picture. I had plans, I had plans.
Oh, okay.
That guy's super
I
tight.
know. But it is still around in the area. They could buy equipment. Kind of very grassroots effort. I couldn't throw this
So, like, you know, all the different shit orchids and you can identify things.
I even got Columbia. The other one that I brought with you cover a telephone pole. You can cover a telephone pole in one summer. Right in my shop.
That's, I mean, it's definitely not for everyone, that's like. We're gonna rally the troops or just kind of. Yeah. Everybody got.
Okay, everyone, get your snacks, come sit down. We're gonna do show and tell. Sorry, everyone at home. I think I just yelled in your ear. All right. Now let's get my ugly face stuff.
So.
Okay. Okay, now we're good to go. I don't know. Hey, guys, attention up here, please. We're getting started. All right.
All right.
And you're on the microphone right here.
All right. So Jeff Harris, this Jeff Harris, not the other Jeff Harris, brought in some plants. This is a monopodial vivacious orchid, meaning it's related to Vandas and Phalaenopsis. This is a Schoenorchis. It's a fairly large genus from Southeast Asia. There are two other species very similar to this. One is the common fragrance, which is fairly widespread in Southeast Asia. There's one called Sidon Fadenii, which is just kind of Thailand. The difference is in the lips of them. So this has a straight-sided lip on it that doesn't really have much of a profile. Fragrance has a sigmoid and S-shaped lip, and Sidon Fadenii has a kind of a J-shaped lip, a kind of a cup lip at the end. Anyway, this is the newest of the three, and it's really cute. So look at you see it in my hands. It's tiny, right? So it's an excellent miniature to get. So this is Schoenorchis Phytomii, which I want to photograph later. This is a beautiful example of a leafless orchid. This is incredible. So this is it's Jeff's. I think it's a Veritaflava. Hyoscista is the genus. Yes, it's a Veritaflava, and it's means green, yellow. You can see that's kind of obvious. This is one of the nicest ones I've seen. Just one plant. That's incredible. So anyway, we had a lady here that spoke on leafless orchids. I didn't attend. I wasn't able to attend to that meeting. And people love these things, but they often kill them just by dehydrating them. So evidently, she said you water them frequently when it's the growing season, and you water them regularly when it's not. You don't let them dry out. You don't give them a dry rest. They need the water. They don't want to stay wet, so you let them dry out between waterings. But when it's the growing season, which is hard to tell, you have green root tips, and they sometimes have little tiny basal leaves at the growing point. When they're actually actively growing, those you can water very frequently. And then during the winter, I give mine water every few days. I'm actually growing some unheated in South San Francisco, so they're not as warm as people like to think. But I think to me, I would clap for that, because that is an amazing plant. And so another thing is, the problem with this is, like, if you're trying to collect them, you almost never get anything that you set out to buy with the name. So you're just gonna buy them, collect them. Okay, well, I got one of those already, but whatever, always labeled. And taxonomically, they're messed too, right? So they're like some of the scientific descriptions are, yes, it's a leafless orchid without any leaves, and the color is this. Like, is this yours too, Jeff?
Yeah.
So he brings in a Brazilian. This is a Zygopetalum. Mark talked about the soft leaf ones. He also brought up the Zygopetalum itself. This is another pseudobulbous Zygopetalum plant. This is a miniature called Promenea xanthina, which obviously means yellow. And there was about 16, 18 species. Just recently I saw they put them all into one, which is, to me, is like, give me a break. I'm pretty adaptable, but I mean, that is ridiculous. But it was done by a Brazilian. It could be there's too many. There's too many in the sense that there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences in the various ones. So this one is really easy to grow. I grow it. I get mine like at the coolest it gets is like 55-degree nights. So I grow a few of the promenades, and they're all miniatures. So it's very nice fruit. And the flowers, I have my other one called Stapilioides. The flowers last 6 weeks. So this is Jeff Harris. So talking to Kay right there. So Jeff brings in this, that's that. So Dan Nadler brings in Dracula bella. It's a Colombian species. This is one of the easiest ones to come by. It's also one of the easiest to grow. Some of these, like a lot of Draculas people would bring to meetings, these would fold by the time they got here, right? So anyway, bellas are a really nice species. And it's one I would seek out if you want to start growing Draculas. It's one of the easier ones to get. And I think that's important when you're looking for them. A lot of them are really hard to come by. So Vince Pietro brings Mastoid Cuxin. This is Leywoods. This is a fairly old variety of the species. This clone has been around for many, many, many years. Mark and Jeff, we went to John Leathers today, and we saw Mastoid Cuxini growing in all the color forms possible. Hundreds and hundreds of flowers, probably about 1,000 flowers all in all. So Vince also brings in the Phalaenopsis, no ID. I can tell you it's a hybrid, but other than that, yeah, it's got Sandriana or Schilleriana in it, but other than that, I don't know.
Oh,
sorry,
didn't see that well.
So Carrie Mitchell and Carolyn. I'm sorry, don't come very often. I haven't been coming. Who's Carrie? Carrie, thank you. Carrie, this is Carrie's plant of Dendrobium mini. It's a section. So the section is spatulata, but it's the antelope, what's called the antelope dendrobium. They have really twisty, spirally segments. This has probably got Canaliculatum and maybe Johannes or something in it. Anyway, it's a really nice little, fairly small. I'd call it a dwarf plant, but it's this is another thing. So talk about weird taxonomy. So this is now supposedly Miltonia Phymatocylum. Or no, I've also seen this Phymatocylum brasiliensis. So who knows what it really is? To me, it's nothing like any other Miltonia. But what is very cool about it is the spirally segments to the flowers. It's really nice. It has these weird kind of bronzy at times pseudobulbs. They're kind of rough in texture. It's got real leathery leaves, but it's a very quite a reliable bloomer. I know it's an intermediate grower. I've never grown it myself, but I like the big panicle, big branch spike of flowers. And that was Stuart Mendiker's plant, right?
Mhm.
Yep. Sorry, Stuart, I almost forgot.
What was the species?
What's that?
What was the species?
So Miltonia fumatochila, Oncidium fumatochilum, or Fumatochilum brasiliensis. So Justin, what's Justin's last name? Hi, Justin, how are you? Like I said, anytime space is like, oh wow, I have to relearn names. So he brings in the Urstedella. This is, I'm sorry, Lockhardia. This is Lockhardia urstedii. This is a member of the Oncidium alliance. So they call them they used to call them punch and Judy orchids, or the braided orchids, because obviously it has those pseudobulbs, has this long braided basically growths. I don't know what you would call it, but they're terminal. The flowers bloom near the terminus of the growth, and they're very easy to grow, and they always make a really rewarding plant. Like almost every one of those, not almost, but yeah, nearly every growth has a flower at the end of it.
Did you say each growth is suitable?
No, it's actually it's leathery. It acts kind of it's a storage unit. You will drop leaves, and the skin will stay alive, but it's not suitable per se. I don't know how they would. I don't know how they would. Mark, you would know. Where's Mark? You left?
Well, he said that Joe Schultz.
Oh, that's okay. He has to get to Sacramento tonight too, right?
Yeah.
So Nancy Garcia von Regenberg. Okay. So she brings in this epidendrum. It's called, well, so is it called orange crucifix? Is that what it's?
Well, that's what I found.
Okay.
Online, because it looks
Yeah.
like it's an orange.
I think it
looks like a phoenix.
I think it's just an unnamed epidendrum hybrid, but they're very cool. They're very easy to grow. I see a lot of them growing in people's yards in the San Francisco area. So you can grow them unheated, but they tend to seem to like intermediate conditions a little bit better. So
Oops, wrong one.
that's it. So Alan, I saw Alan before he brings in this. So this is another thing. When I first started orchids, this was an epidendrum. Then it went to encyclia and then it went to euchyle, and currently it's what's called Prostechia maryi. It's one of two beautiful species, very closely related. And this is maryi. The other one's citrina. It's very, very similar. They have these glaucous leaves. They have this one has an erect plant. Citrina has a pendant plant. It's one of my favorite Mexican species. So I grow several of them unheated. They bloom most years, but they just don't thrive. I don't know. They can't give them up. So they probably would like 50 degree minimum. So Alan also brings this bifrenaria. He has it as Harrisoniana. It's a Brazilian genus. And yet I don't know. This doesn't quite look like Harrisonia, but I guess it is. It's what you would call a polymorphic species. It comes in all different color forms. And so Harrisonia, yeah, I don't think it is, come to think of it, because Harrisonia's flowers spikes are half this size, they're down by the pseudobulb, and they don't usually branch like this. Or not branch, but have multiple flowers like that. So maybe it's not. It could be Atropurpurea or hybrid of Harrisonia.
Smell that. Smell it. White pepper.
Like kind of like a not
So,
white, yeah, not
like
white,
cut grass.
something. Yeah, it's got a few different fragrances.
It's a distinct smell. You should try it. We have a Capnemia.
So Shu, I saw talking Shu earlier, brings in this little plant called Capanemia uliginosa. I think actually it's superflua is the correct name. Capanemia superflua. Uliginosa is an old name. There's 13 species in this. This is the largest of the 13. Has the most incredible fragrance. You look at it, go, oh, that's cute. It has an incredible fragrance. And it's a member of the Oncidium alliance, which is look at it. Well, that looks nothing like anything else in the group. It's a very cute little miniature. It's a really rewarding plant too. So Nancy Garcia von Kriegenberg brings in the unknown. It's basically an Oncidium. It's a what we used to call a molten generic, but a lot of things got put all into Oncidium, a dancing lady. So the dancing lady orchid. Somebody probably here probably knows the actual name. I don't. At the top, is that still learn your mind? Ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen, Mark. Aren't you going soon? Aren't you going soon? You can have all the hybrids you want. So Jeff Harris, our Jeff Harris here brings this just brings a Barcarius spectaculus, member of the Cattleya line. So it's related to, at one time when I first started growing it was considered an epidendrum. Anyway, it's a beautiful species, Mexican. These things, if they don't lose their leaves in the winter, you're probably not doing something quite right. They go deciduous. A lot of them get quite cool temperatures in the winter, but of course it's formed when actively growing. So this is probably the largest flowered species of the genus, Barcarius spectaculus.
Want to talk about your Tillandsia? Did you mean to bring that Tillandsia?
Yeah, I don't know which one it is.
Oh,
It was just in bloom and I stuck it in there.
As an ugly orchid.
that's a plumosa, I think, or something. Carl would know. Carl Carter. Is Carl here?
Yeah, Carl's here.
What's this? Carl. He left. He had to catch Bart.
King of the bromeliads.
Anyway, I think it's plumosa, one of those.
I don't know. Oh, Jeff, did you bring these?
This is mine.
Okay.
You skip to here because I have to go help them do something.
Okay,
So all that's mine. You can start
all of this.
that over. I'll
Okay.
come back. I'll come talk.
There's no name tags.
The K-clom, who asked me to help speak, is maxillary. Maxillary is a highly confused genus. There's like 800 species. So this is called Lepidota. I'm not sure it actually really is a lot of forms of it, but it's a really cute species. It grows cool. I know people grew this outside in San Francisco. I think it wants it a little bit warmer than that, but they did grow and flower and stuff. Bye, Mara. That was really high quality abuse. Thank you. Anytime, give me a call. I'll be happy to. So we have he also brings a section for most things. They draw them infundibulum. Infundibulum means like a funnel. If you look at it from profile, the lip's got a long funnel-like tube. It's a northern Thailand species into India. Flowers can last a couple months, so it's long-lived. It's cooler growing, but it seems again not really like it outside all that much. So I would suggest growing in a cool greenhouse, but they do like warm days in their growing season. So Kay also brings in a promenade. This is called Ovata loba, and has this wonderful yellowish flower, light yellow. The segments are a little bit lighter and a real dark plum colored spot right in the base of the lip. So that's Kay's comments also. Yeah. So again, this is all probably just now they say whatever, and I think it's Papilioides or Xanthina. They've lumped them all together. Kay brings in a Renanthera vietnamense, which is a one I only recently saw for the first time. It's a really beautiful species. The vandaceous orchid related to Phalaenopsis and Vandas. And a cool grower. Okay. Well, I didn't see it grow cool, but yours is a really nice spike. So
What was it again? It's
Renanthera vietnamense.
from the mountains in Vietnam.
What's that? Renanthera. So, ooh, wow, nice spike.
Isn't that beautiful?
This is
No tag.
no tag. So this is yours, Kay? So it's I think it's Phalaenopsis stobardiana.
From Brookside, you've got a tag there. I'm sorry. No plaque.
Yeah, stobardiana. It's wonderful. It's a group. So it's the section is called a phyllae, which means without leaves. You know, there's no leaves in this Phalaenopsis. It's a death sentence for every other Phalaenopsis. But this group can do it. These can actually take down the freezing temperatures in the wild, and they all smell really good. Oh, it smells. Yeah, it's not that it's not supposed to. It just didn't recount. It just didn't come back like that. If you do that annually, yeah, it smells great though. Kay likes it because it's not pink. It's got a pink lip though. Okay, I have to take it home. I have to take it home. I'm sorry. I have to take it home. I'm sorry. The pink is overwhelming.
Let me smell it first.
Wilson, one called Wilson, which is pink. I'm sorry, is really incredibly fragrant. It's wonderful.
I don't know who brought this Cattleya.
It's up for monastery.
That brings a Cattleya mossiae varieties, a form of cerulea. This is the blue form. It lacks the red pigment. And interestingly, this is also called the Mother's Day orchid because it almost invariably always blooms in Mother's Day. It's a Venezuelan species. So
I know I told you to turn the light off. Could you turn this bank on? Thank you.
That's good.
So Sharon Palmacera brings in this Phalaenopsis schilleriana. It's the Philippine species. It's got beautiful leaves. Like most Phalaenopsis have solid green leaves. You see this one's banded with, banded with silver, kind of gray silver. It's beautiful. Anyway, we saw plants of this in the Philippines, just giant plants of it. The plants were about 15, 16 inches long. But they have huge spikes that just are great. So this is used a lot in hybridization, for obvious reasons. I think a lot of the hybrids, they lose that leaf pattern though. Sharon also brings in Dendrobium mini. So this is the same as what we just saw down there, the same process as this one here. So it's one of the antelope ones, as I said. But interestingly, this is another one of those things that's gone through a series of dangers. It's a plurothalid. It started off as plurothallis, then it went to speculinia, then went to muscarella, and now I believe they're called andrettias. And this is one called macroblepharus, which means large eyelashes. And it's very, very, very cute. And you can see it's in full bloom. It's in full bloom.
Oops.
It was.
It's not.
It was. As I like to say, grown by Sharon, destroyed by Derek. So Paula's you. Paula for probably going on 30 years now, brings in this medium sweet Devon sweet Devon sweet. Is that correct? Sweet. Oh, I see. You spell it Devon to make sure I could read your hieroglyphic. Yeah. So anyway, it's a Cividium devonianum hybrid. So devonianum is a Himalayan species, and it's all kind of its own group of, it's its own section of Dendrobium. I'm sorry, it's Cymbidium. And they always have pendant spike checks. You sometimes have to guide the spike over the edge of the pot if you're going in a pot, because they'll bury themselves. Actually, I potted one time. There's all these spike went into the pot. Has an kind of unusual leaf. These show fairly good broadness to the leaf. But Devonianum is a really wonderful species. Paul also brings in Dendrobium Dream Ace. So this is a Dendrobium nobly type, I guess. Yeah. Looks like I might have unicum a little bit into it too. Anyway, it's really pretty. You got that?
Yep.
Good. I don't know.
A little something.
What, you wrinkled your nose?
That's how I enhance the smell. Not as good as a trophy on, yeah.
And Paul also brings in Dendrobium hancocki. So there's two species in there. I never quite understand the difference. One is Hainanense, and I guess that's not correct. It's called Odiosum, I think. Anyway, it's a wonderful thing, but people love it because it's got this kind of like graceful bamboo like habit to it, and also we can grow it outside in the Bay Area. So that's a really good thing too. The flowers last surprisingly long. If you look at them, they're almost diaphanous, but they last for weeks. That's really a nice thing. So
What's the difference between that and Hainanense?
I'm not sure. That's the thing. It's like, yeah. And to me, it's something kind of like a honey fragrance, a little bit of honey overtone or undertone.
What's day after?
Kind of semi-translucent, kind of tissuey like, yeah. What? Oh, and the great man are hybrids. So that's a Mad Hatter brought in by Sharon also. Is this a Dexter hybrid you're saying? Oh, you got it from him. Or he made it. I think you just got it from him, right? Okay. It's got an angulata in it. I can see that.
How did we miss the Psychopsis?
I know, right? Dan, that's Dan a long time. He brings in Psychopsis papilio. So this is the clone Mendenhall, which has an FCC, a first class certificate. It's the highest award you can get with the American Orchid Society system. So, yeah, it's great. So do we miss anybody else in the plan?
All of Jeff.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
All right. Sorry, I had to do the luggage swap. Okay, so I brought in two maxillarias that are sort of related to Maxillaria tenifolia that people know with the coconut fragrance that was red. You brought one? Okay. So this one is fragrant up front here. This is the Yamada yellow form of tenifolia, and it smells like tenifolia. But this other one is a hybrid. and it does not have a fragrance. So this is Max Memorial Ben Berliner Yellow Cape.
This one was, yeah.
Yes. So it looks similar, but it doesn't have the coconut fragrance. No fragrance, but it's a really, I get a really good flush of bloom that lasts a long time out of this. So this, if you get a chance to smell it, it's really strong grape smell. It fills the whole greenhouse. You can smell it when you walk in the door. I think it's someone mentioned moats. I think I got it from, oh, here it is. Vanda Horn Frog. Horns? Horn frog. It's a hybrid. But anyway, this here is Dendrobium celiac, right? I thought it had a fragrance, but I didn't know it was smelled. It's got very delicate and interesting flowers with the curls and fringe.
That's really nice. You have to smell it now.
Oh, what does it smell like?
I don't know how to describe it.
This one of my favorites. This is a cool growing Oncidium alliance, an odont.
Y-adium?
Y-adium. Yeah, and it's been blooming for almost 2 months like that outside. So these are cool growing. I grow Draculas, Pleurathalis, begonias, all under my deck. Yeah, everything cool. So as well as this is it's an odont. It's called something else now. Oh,
that represents.
yeah, Lincoln. Yeah, and it's a Cervantesii, and I think it looks very Art Deco. Those sort of rings of
It's such a great.
lines. Then I brought this little Dracula. Oh, you're on.
I'm on this.
Tolumnia. This is a Tolumnia guianensis. It's by Guian. I don't know. It's not really it's not really a self. I don't know what you call it.
A sibling cross?
Sibling cross. Yeah. I think I got that in Sacramento when we went to their show.
Speaker's Day?
Speaker's Day. Yeah. And then this little Dracula has been blooming for 3 weeks or so. And it's just really got a lot of texture.
Is it that one?
No, it's hold on, let me get the tag. Orientalis. So it's kind of really cute and flat, but it has a lot of got a strong texture, form, whatever. And this is the more typical.
Is this you?
No.
I think I missed Michael's.
He was saying that it was there. I'm sorry. Yeah, and it's a beautiful flower of it too. This is the more typical coloration. So I think, oh, and then I brought this Encyclia which smells like root beer in the middle of the day. I think it's that right? Or yeah, Boracana. It's Alata by Bractescens. So it's the Alata is where it gets the root beer smell. It's the species. And then I brought in this Pleurathalis stricta, and it's got a lot of flowers on it. If you look really close, they're kind of vertical with stripes, and they kind of have they're a little transparent, white actually, kind of like little Shapia. And that's it. That's all the stuff.
Okay. Can you hear me online? Yeah. Yes.
Do that too?
Please.
That too?
Here.
Take pictures.
This
Okay.
is overtime pay. Can you talk into the
That's
mic?
all. Sorry. Oh. So Peter Cinciano brings in this Dendrobium gallans tangela, so it's almost identical to a species called Dendrobium mollianum, so they're a group of dendrobiums that there's several groups of dendrobiums that lose all their leaves, and so they'll bloom, sometimes with leaves, but often just off the nose, off the various little sections of the cane, so it's probably got quite long-lived flowers. I don't really know this cross, but it looks just like mollianum. I think it's got mollianum in it. So we got Jeff's plants here. So he brings in yesterday. Ungacensis bob times tourmaline red flame. Ungacensis is a beautiful species looking very similar to that from Bolivia. That's just a great species. It doesn't have that orange color, it has a white background, white to pink background. That favors that with the stripes, but I know what tourmaline is. Scepticism gibbosum, those flowers can be 3 inches across. I grow one on a fence in the backyard. It's a wonderful, one of the most wonderful species in the genus, the Pleurothallid genus. And so what you're looking at is an upside down flower. So that thing that's coming straight out like a crane's bill is the dorsal sepal. And then the lateral sepals are the 2 white things, which are called cushions. And the tiny little petals and lip, which are inside the flower that you can't see. And then Jeff brought in, we saw this in person, this Odontoglossum. Now on Oncidium, they say Windiana. Don't sell that to an Odontoglossum grower. They refuse to believe that, but that's what they say it is now. Yes, sir. Okay, so Dave Hermeyer brings in this, not sure it's a Lele cattleya anymore. It could just be a pure cattleya according to the taxonomy, whatever. It's called Black Forest. And I'm guessing the clone, this individual's dark splendor too. So I don't know anything about that. It looks like it's one of the one-leafed bulbed. Dave also brings Ludicea discolor. I don't know if it's Ludicea or Hemiria. I can't remember that. Both names have happened, but it's the easiest to grow jewel orchid. You can buy these at stores. They're great. The whole time I was growing up, I started orchids when I was 16, and they're basically this black velvety leaf with kind of reddish lines of them. Now they come with light green with white lines. They come in almost black. So there's a bunch of different variations on this species, but it's a fairly decent house plant if your house isn't too dry. So Dave brings in this, or Dave has this next layer, Soconuscana. So this is, I want to say it's a Chiapas species. The flowers are about 2.5 inches, I believe, top to bottom. It's close relative to some other common species, but you don't see this one very commonly in cultivation. It's not all that kind. Dave, that's a really good blooming, by the way. So also, I guess these are Dave's.
No, I think that.
That's Roberta. Hi, Roberta. So this is Roberta's a good friend of mine. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm okay.
Excellent. Well, I like your plants here.
Thank you.
So Roberta grows this species. I would never think to it, but then Roberta has these plants outside in Orange County, Costa Mesa. I would never even think of growing them outside, right? It's like, no, you can't do that. Well, yes, you can, right? So this is Engricum germinianum. It's a Madagascaran species that's really got a bunch of different flower forms and growth habit forms. Actually, the flowers are all fairly similar, but the growth habits can be all over the place. What's cool about it, it's a non-resuppinate orchid, which means it has the lip uppermost and all the petals and sepals hang down on it. It's nocturnally fragrant, right?
Right.
Does it smell good?
Oh yeah, very sweet. But yeah, it lives out on the patio. I can't bring it in the house. This thing is too big.
Right. Well, you got a black background there. I know where you took it.
Yeah.
She's a photography room with a big black sheet in there, black velvet sheet. I've used it many times. Roberta brings in this. This is a fairly recent thing that came on the market within the last 10 years. This is Dendrobium rinjoniensis, and it's got this wonderful canes. I got the canes are kind of like pillowed. You know, they got these weird segments to it. It's very cool. It's got these. It's a section called petalonum, and most of these bloom where the leaves drop. You can see most of them are on canes that have already dropped their leaves. So it must go through some kind of dry rest period, at least a cooler dry rest period. She brings in, so I saw this plant in person. Epidendrum lacustri. It's well, this one is from Panama. This is one that she calls Wow Fireworks or wherever she got it. Is this your clonal name?
Yep.
Yeah.
I had to come up with it instantly when it got awarded.
Yep. So
It does look like fireworks.
it's really cool. So they're large flowers, right?
They're big flowers, and that there's this tremendous contrast between that pristine white lip and the darker flowers. That's why you have this whole head of flowers that looks like fireworks.
Looks like the underside of the leaves are purple, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So Judy Drew brings in this Dendrobium moniliforme cubeni. It's one of the cultivars. I call it a cultivar. I'm not sure you'd find this in the wild, but it's pink, whereas most of the species are white flowered with a little basal brown marking on the lip. So this is a variegated leaf form. You got the margins. This is one that we can grow outside in the Bay Area. It might like it a little warmer, but they can be grown outside in the immediate Bay Area. So it's a nice species for that. It has hundreds of, it's got almost as many forms as the Vanda or Neophanetia falcata. Judy also brings in the Sweet Memory, Lidoro. I don't really know much about it. It's got Violacean, other things in, obviously a lot of other things in it. Sorry, I'm at a loss sometimes. Brings in, oh, very cool, a little terrestrial orchid called Ponorchis. I think this is now an Amidostigma, or I think it's a Hemipelia now, Graminifolia. So it's got all these, I think again, they're cultivars because they have this whole selection of patterns of stripes and colors, different color forms. So I think they kind of line bred them, but it's a really cute little thing. It needs a little bit cooler temperature, but Judy, if you're listening, if you can mention how you grow it.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
Uh, it was gifted to me at the expo by Seed and Gay, or Satomi.
Okay.
She told me to just stick it in some moss, and I was like, okay, that's cool. So I separated the three and I kind of experimented. One has just moss, one has some bark mixed in, and one has kanuma, which is kind of like, I think it's like clay
Kind of
from,
gravelly like thing. Yeah, that's what the middle
yeah.
one is, right? Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't think any of it mattered. I think as long as you kept it kind of damp and enough air going through the pot, I think all three of them were totally fine.
Interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the smallest one, I thought it was just dying, but turns out maybe it's just that corm. I have it growing at an east window at my mom's. At first, I
Yeah.
kind of kept it directly in the light. I thought they like a lot of sun, but it kind of scorched the leaf. So my mom keeps it kind of further back and doesn't bring it toward the window until like noon when the sun is away. And
Sure.
then the middle one, I took it back to my house and I'm growing it under my grow lights in my cooler kitchen. So I think they're really easy to grow, to be honest. And I'm kind of excited for more people to start growing them once it hits the market more. But I only know of like Orchid Limited, some other garden that sells this, and then Seed and Gay that sells this. But that's like the only three vendors I know of right now.
Interesting. I think that one on the left is not the same species. I've never seen anything like that. It looks like a completely different species. I think you might have lucked out. Seriously.
I don't know where that came from. Like I can't find anything that looks like that, but I definitely
It's
got
not,
these three
it's not a
cores.
cultivar. It's definitely something different. So there's a whole bunch of species in the genus. So you could have lucked
Yeah.
out, right? Yeah. Take care of that
Yeah.
one especially. Yeah.
It kind of creeps me out, but it's really small. But my mom has that one, so.
Good. I love that. All right. I'm going to move on. The K plum brings in, so this is the other species that was talked about that was related to the Prostechia myrrhae over there, the green with the white lip. I said it was a pendant plant, so it's a beautiful thing. It has this wonderful citrus smell, so it looks like it smells like it looks, right? Some orchids look like that one with her flowers that smell like grape soda, right? It's weird. So this has a very citrusy smell. It's a Mexican species. It wants a cool, dry winter. You don't really water it. Don't keep it wet and cold. You can give it a little bit of water during the winter on nice days, but make sure it dries out completely. And I have about 12 of these. I love them. He also brings in a dendrobium. This is in situ, so you saw it in the wild. This is Dendrobium aphyllum. We used to call it Perardii. Anyway, this is a beautiful example of it. And look how it's grown without, like, it's got all the new growths coming at the top, and all the canes have dropped their leaves for the rest period. And so it's what you call a monsoonal orchid. It's a typical example of what's called a monsoonal orchid, where it gets a lot of water and then gets cool and dry. The trees lose their leaves. Everything kind of just takes a break. And I think as spring comes on, then it goes to town with flowers. It's really.
So is that to growing with fungal vegetables? I'm not sure it's in.
Well, yeah, I think the term in situ might not be correctly used, but yes, yeah, it's showing you what it looks like, and it's from there. So Salaki cristata is a great species. Again, we grow it outside in the Bay Area. This is a species that you really don't want to get the plant, give it much water during the winter. It blooms way better without getting much water in the winter. And they're also really hate being repotted. So I don't know what to tell you, but they hate it. They'll sulk. So, but it's a great orchid. I've had one since I was 16. What's that? They don't like to be watered in the winter. They want to be like dry rest. Yeah, there's a lot of orchids that are like that. Like things from Mexico, the opposite of us. We've got, say November to May, we can have rain, right? They've got May to November where they get like inundated with rain and are dry and cool. For much of Mexico is that way for the year. So they're really specific. So anyway, it's a great species, easy to grow in the Bay Area. I've had this plant, my plant this for 50 years.
You're old.
I know. Getting older. Yeah, who said it? You. You're older than me, I think.
Yes, I am.
I still love you, don't worry.
I know, I get you.
Okay, I think that might be it. Cool.
Thank you, Ron. So thank the people that joined online. Bye-bye.